Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my October 2024 page 112 tag. The page 112 tag was brought to BookTube by Sean the Book Maniac. It's based off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised the long list of said prize solely by reading page 112 of the books in contention. And I believe these are all novels, so in the traditional novel, page 112 is roughly in the middle. It's supposed to be after all of the polished for editors pages where you get to the raw, real writing. And without the context of the rest of the story, you can really only judge the book on the quality of said writing. So I've been using this tag ever since the start of COVID to slowly whittle down my physical unread shelves while building them back up again. I take 3 pieces of paper from this handy-dandy Books and Cats mug. These pieces of paper are titles that are on my shelves from 2023 or earlier. And I go ahead, I pick out 3 at random, then I read page 112 on camera with you and decide on one of the books to add to this month's TBR. So that's the gist of the game. I often do have other biases in my head. Like right now I'm dealing with some sort of slump or something, I guess you could call it. My reading isn't where I would want it to be. I'm struggling with what I already have on my TBR, so it would be great to get a shorter book, I guess, if I'm going to add another book to the TBR, but we shall see, and hopefully no matter what, the book will be good. So that should help. And without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to go with book number 1. It's the end of the year, so there's also only a few pieces of paper in here, and so they can get stuck together, but this is just one piece, so there we go. All right. The Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. This is a book I've played with before. I believe I acquired it a few years ago at the Gaithersburg Book Festival's used library book sale. It might also be a shorter book, so there's that. All right, and book number 2. I also like to go for a little bit of variety. Subject-wise, I feel like there's a lot of same literary contemporary fiction, but I don't know, maybe I could have gotten it from another place or something. But let's see, these two definitely are sticking together, but okay, I got that one. The Flight Portfolio by Julie Oranger. I do think this is quite different in terms of length, so my biases might sneak up on me, but I remember, I think I got this a few years ago from, I think I found it at the Capitol Hill bookstore. It's really one of those fun, quirky used bookstores, like where all the books are crammed into a townhouse. And this might be, both of these I think are historical fiction though, so there's that. And finally, book number 3, maybe I'll tentatively hope it's not historical fiction. I think I've played with one of those books before and not the other, so it would be nice if I played with this one before. It would cut down on my post-production time, but whoo, here we go. It came out like this. Olympus, Texas by Stacy Swan. I haven't played with this one before. I think I also got it from the Capitol Hill bookstore, but from a different trip there. So that's a little bit of diversity, right? And I'm not sure if it's historical or more contemporary. I think it's family drama, and looking forward to trying it out. Okay, you've seen me pull out all 3 of these books. I will go ahead and read the page 112 separately first to gather my thoughts, but I will be back soon. Stay tuned. Okay, I'm back, ready to share my thoughts on these 3 books, starting with book number 1, The Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. The old man straightened up painfully and said, "I'll let you rest." Coming over to the desk, he asked, "Have you a new junior, Nurse Power?" "Just a skivvy," said Bridie before I could answer. "A replacement like yourself." The priest looked back at me and jerked his head at her. "I see she's a quick one." I said, "Don't I know it, Father?" He sneezed and wiped his great reddened nose. "Excuse me, ladies," I asked, "have you a cold brewing? I'm just getting over a little dose of this flu. If I may, Father." I put the back of my hand to his forehead, which was warmish. "Shouldn't you be in bed, then, to be on the safe side?" "I'd rather walk it off," said Father Xavier. "I might as well be useful on the fever wards." "But the strain concerning your—" He raised his tufted eyebrows. "Considering my age, young lady, how much would it matter in the greater scheme of things if I were taken this very night?" Bridie let out a snort. Father Xavier winked at her. "I'll be grand. I hear the old are getting through this better than the young." I qualified that, "well, as a general rule." The priest said briskly, "His ways are mysterious." Delia Garrett's eyes were open now, her gaze following the old man out the door. She looked hollowed out. I couldn't bear to see her this way. "Hot whiskey, Mrs. Garrett?" As soon as I handed her the cup, she drained it, then lay back down on her pillows and closed her eyes. Okay, so this one also opens in the middle of a conversation, and in a way, it's a little, in the beginning, even more, confusing to me than the one in the sci-fi book. So, that one actually was more straightforward. I think I was confused about who the new person was the father was meeting. Was it Bridie or the narrator? And at first, I figured that the narrator was the new person because he was looking at Bridie, but now I'm thinking it was Bridie sort of like, jumping into the conversation to introduce herself. So it's just a little confusing without context. But after we get past that hiccup, the narrative moves really quickly. Like, I feel like, there's very limited, external posturing about, like, setting the scene about, what the characters are reacting to physically or what the physical environs are. But it's okay because I feel like the dialogue is just so rigorous and riveting. Like, I'm just right there in the scene. Maybe it's just my U.S. Thoughts sometimes, like, because this dialogue feels very British to me, so I almost feel like, oh, it's like I'm in a different culture, and that's kind of cool on its own. Although I'm very concerned for this elderly father, I suppose, who seems to be deciding to be on the fever wards with a fever. Actually, I feel like, it's not good for him. I'm not sure it's that good for the patients either. But yeah, I think one of the only other things I dislike about this is that there's no quotation marks. I just, that's such a pet peeve of mine that apparently Emma Donoghue does as well. I've never read any of her other works, so I guess I'll have to keep it in mind if I read anything else from hers. I do find this very intriguing. Book number 2 is The Flight Portfolio by Julie Oranger, which I have actually played with before. The day before yesterday, I was swimming in the Mediterranean off of Port Bell with Golo Man, entirely in the nude, while the others had their siesta. Fine young man, Golo. Under different circumstances, you might have been jealous. And you, too, I trust, are also well. Your students love you, and your friends keep you busy. Your bed must be full of boyfriends by now, and I can't blame you, as long as you kick them out before I get back. Have you perhaps by now settled upon one of the houses you described in your earlier letter? Whichever it is, I promise I'll love it. I'll get home to you and to it as soon as I can. For now, dear E., imagine how grateful I am to have a wife who understands the necessity and urgency of my work here, as I sincerely hope you still do. With love, as ever, your V. He blotted the letter and capped the pen. Grant, reading over his shoulder, made a noise of quiet bemusement. I hardly merit a mention, he said. Varian turned in his chair. I wrote your name twice, didn't I? Perhaps I'm not as fine a man as young Golo. Grant sat before him on the bed. They had agreed to meet for a drink on Varian's balcony, while Katznelson visited a colleague at the university. Grant and Lisbon. From some secret linguistic reserve, he'd produced a knowledge of Portuguese that had allowed him to shop for a sky-blue cravat in the manner of the local dandies. In his pocket, a silver cigarette case filled with a set of Cuban cigarillos, and a diminutive silver cutter. What could Varian have written to Eileen about Elliot Grant, the apparition who refused to disappear? Varian had nothing to hide, as regarded his own behavior. Not that he and Eileen were in the habit of hiding anything. Eileen detested ignorance above all else, and most of all her own ignorance in personal affairs. When they'd agreed early on that a cosmopolitan marriage allowed for an occasional adventure on the side, they'd also agreed to be perfectly honest. It was no secret to Eileen that he'd had liaisons with men. She tolerated them as a peculiarity of his character. But how was he to be honest with her about Grant, when Grant's presence was still a matter of consternation and confusion? Okay, well, I'll just start to say it's kind of interesting to compare this one to the last book, which was about YA romance troubles. Maybe it would be easier if, the protagonist of that story could just, have both boys, It would make it much easier if she were in a cosmopolitan relationship with her lovers. I mean, not that I really know enough about the context of that story. And anyway, to get back to this one. I'd forgotten a lot of the details other than Holocaust, but Varian Grant was an American rescuer who went abroad to Europe to try to rescue artists and such from, persecution. And I remember I read about his complicated past, maybe in an essay by Dara Horn in People Love Dead Jews, which maybe I should read again before reading this book. But yeah, as far as this is at all about his rescue missions, maybe the very end of his letter to his wife maybe alluded to it. But other than that, he mostly seems to be on some, striking romantic vacation where he can't seem to shake this guy Grant, I suppose. I mean, even I guess if you're going to have dalliances with men, maybe there's still parameters that could be crossed. Like, it kind of seems like from this exposition that he wants to be a little more casual with these relationships, and Grant might be sticking around and be a little more important than all that. And what's going to happen then when he returns home to Eileen, who he's expecting will kick all her lovers out of bed? So presumably he should do the same. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting how, having the letter and having his lover read over his shoulder gives this opportunity for a lot of exposition where we can explain what the marriage is like and all of that. And it's definitely, I don't know, I guess I'm getting the feeling that it's going to be a really chock-full book. It's a very chunky book. I know from, the cover copy, it's going to be about some of his rescue missions, which don't, appear at all in this page. So it gives off the impression it's going to be a lot more hyper-specific about his personal life as well. And finally, book number 3 is Olympus, Texas, which is actually new to the game, so I'll have to read it now, in person. March is about to ask if her plans include Ryan, and if she wants to invite him over here instead, but Arlo beats him to speaking. Ryan, I'm guessing? Arlo's tone is sour, but Artie ignores it and says, "Come fishing with me tomorrow morning, Arlo. I've got an early pig hunt, but I'll be done by 10. "I can think of better things to do," he says. "Come on, I'll bring the gear, my usual spot." Fine. Rather than look at her, Arlo spins his empty beer bottle like a top. Artie attempts to smile at March, waving goodbye to them both before she heads to her car. They watch her drive away, and March waits for Arlo to explain. Instead, Arlo nods at the drained bottles by their feet. How should we rectify that? "Haven't been to my place since I got back. Interested?" It was March's favorite bar, not just here in town, but anywhere. The place he bought his first underage drink, as well as his first legal one. They decided to walk there, a mile away and off of the town square, so that they could both drink as much as they want. Neither of them speaks on the walk. They are longtime practitioners of comfortable silences. Theirs has always been a friendship of balance. Arlo might be smarter, but March was stronger. Arlo could be meaner, but March was much more dangerous. All faults on both sides were accepted as perfectly natural. However, after the third time Arlo kicks away the litter in his path, Coke bottle, Lone Star can, another Coke bottle, March has to admit that this quiet is not the comfortable kind. "What's up with you and Artie?" March says. Arlo gives him a side eye and asks him a question in return. "What do you know about her and Ryan?" "Just that she's seeing him." They continue to walk down the edge of the country road, dipping further into the ditch one cars approach. "Apparently it's so serious she won't pinch hit as my tour manager this summer. I asked her this morning." "That sucks for you, but good for Artie, right?" Okay, well, this is a fun family drama that feels contemporary, unlike the other two. There is, I guess, a little bit of confusion about the characters. I guess especially, well, first of all the names are, not all that gendered, so it can be hard to tell at first who's who. But mostly it comes down to Artie, I think, because, she's in the page, but she doesn't speak for herself, so that part of it can be kind of confusing. But then the friendship between Arlo and March really takes forefront of the scene, and I really appreciated it. I like the visceral details of walking to the bar and kicking the cans and learning about their friendship and exposition. And then there's some intriguing little bits is Arlo some sort of performer? At first I guess, and maybe this is just bias, just thinking he's a surly old guy from a small town or whatever, but maybe there's more to his story than we know, and Arlo's relationship with Artie has more dimension than we could certainly tell from this page, and her relationship with an off-the-screen character. But, yeah, I still was drawn to it. I was drawn to mostly, of course, the discussion and the relationship between these two men. And otherwise, I, know from, my non-page 112 tag, from the cover copy stuff, that this is a family drama, and I think it brings in some mythological elements to it, maybe, I guess, for the drama aspect. And I have to say, I am intrigued. But to pick a winner, I think I will first get rid of The Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue, even though it is the shortest book, which I was kind of hoping for. And, I still am intrigued by, the dialogue, although I'm not 100% sure who's who still. Am I still getting, the names and associations wrong? And I also feel like I have to punish her for her lack of quotation marks. But sooner or later I'll have to get beyond that. And then when it comes to these two books, well, for Flight Portfolio, we do get a, much more, drama about, family and romance than we do any of the historical stuff about Varian Fry in here. And, I did find it, fun and intriguing to read about, I don't know, the letter seems a little stilted to me, but that's probably, not really fair. I don't know, I might be straining for that complaint, but, but it is fun to ruminate on, what might be going on between Varian and his wife versus this lover, although it's not all quite on the page either. There's a lot of sort of judgments I think on his behalf, and I'm not entirely 100% sure of his relationship with this man, if it's meant to be long-term or not, and how he feels about it. So there's that, and there is also this page count, which is quite hefty. And then there's the fact that Olympus, Texas is the shiny newer book of these two that, I've never played with it before, and it's, I've owned it for less time. And I might just go ahead and go for the shiny new book. The middle page count, the sort of on-the-page family drama, and go from there, and hopefully it will be a good time. And that about covers it for me now. I will leave the Goodreads links for all three of these books listed down below if you'd like more information on them, as well as a link to my TBR Games playlist where I play the Page 112 tag monthly, and I also have my BookTube spin quarterly. And finally, for this outro, I always like to do a little shout out to fellow booktubers who play TBR games or do readathons, something to encourage some fun, spontaneous reading, as I kind of feel like this game is for me. And I decided to go seasonal this month for Leandra the TBR Zero's TBR Harvest readathon, which technically started at the beginning of October, but it does have, those spooky feels, and it goes until the end of the month, until Halloween. So I figure people can still dip into this. And it looks like she created a couple of fun boards, like a haunted house and also a corn maze, and both of them feature various prompts to encourage reading, and I think one of them is a group activity, possibly. And I'm just always impressed. I even feel like the visuals are really cool, and there's just so much creativity that goes into these things. And I will link to her announcement video down below. Anywho, I should be back on this channel hopefully in the near future for an Am Reading update video. I've officially stopped adding new books to my TBR this month, so I gotta hopefully make some progress here and get out of whatever reading slump or whatever this is and get back to the love of the game. And I hope you are all enjoying your reading this month as well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.